Good morning. My name is Lidana Erfiandri. Today I will present my thesis entitled Strategic Analysis of Geotechnical Laboratory Spin-off from PT Studio Mineral Batubara, supervised by Professor Amin Wibowo. This study focuses on strategy, not only from a technical view, but also from organizational and value creation perspectives. This presentation is structured into 5 parts: background, theoretical framework, methods, results and discussion, and conclusion.
9 miners are reportedly trapped underground following a landslide in eastern Turkey. A massive wave of earth was seen rushing down a gully, engulfing everything in its path. 400 search and rescue personnel are on site, working to locate the miners. The mine has been operational since 2009 and employs almost 670 people.
When geotechnical failure occurs, mining operations stop immediately.
9 miners are reportedly trapped up.
This is not only a technical problem, but a business and safety issue. Many mining incidents show that weak geotechnical control leads to operational losses, safety risk, and regulatory consequences. Geotechnical laboratories may look small in organizational structure, but their impact is significant. Their outputs influence slope design, safety decisions, and regulatory approval. This makes laboratory capability strategically important, not just operational. Indonesia has thousands of active mining permits. This shows a large and complex mining industry operating under strict regulation. As a result, demand for reliable and independent geotechnical services continues to increase. PT Studio Mineral Batubara is an Indonesian mining consulting firm established in 2008. It provides mining consultancy, geotechnical engineering, and laboratory testing. PT SMB also operates in an in-house geotechnical lab that supports slope stability analysis, soil and rock testing, and compliance. This lab unit becomes the focus of this research. This study addresses 3 main questions. First, whether the laboratory is internally ready for operate independently. Second, how strong its competitive position is within the industry. Third, whether a spin-off is the most viable strategic option compared to other alternatives. These questions are analyzed using strategic management frameworks. I use capability analysis, industry attractiveness, and parenting advantage theory to understand both value creation and strategic fit. All frameworks are integrated into one analytical structure. This ensures that internal, external, and corporate level perspectives are evaluated consistently. This research uses a case study approach with mixed methods. Qualitative data comes from interviews and expert judgment, while quantitative data supports strategic and financial evaluation. Data sources include internal company data, external stakeholder input, and industry information. Analytical tools include internal assessment, industry analysis, and portfolio-based strategy frameworks. Triangulation is applied to ensure consistency between qualitative insights and analytical results. I will begin with the findings for research question 1, which focuses on internal readiness and value creation potential of the geotechnical laboratory. From an operational and organizational perspective, the lab demonstrates clear workflows, defined service processes, and dedicated technical personnel. Importantly, there is growing managerial awareness of cost structures and service economics, which is essential for operating independently. In terms of capability maturity, the lab has established core geotechnical testing capabilities and shows effective integration between field data collection, laboratory testing, and technical interpretation. These integrations supports consistency in service quality and turnaround time. From a value creation perspective, this discounted cash flow analysis indicates positive value creation under the base case scenario. This laboratory is no longer dependent solely on internal consulting demand and has begun to generate revenue from external clients. Overall, these findings suggest that the laboratory has evolved beyond a purely supporting function and now exhibits the characteristics of a semi-autonomous business unit with the potential to create or to operate independently. While internal readiness is necessary, it is not sufficient on its own. The next section examines whether external industry conditions also support the case for independence. I will now move to the findings for research question 2, which examines the laboratory position relative to its industry environment. From the industry perspective, the geotechnical testing sector in Indonesia is assessed as moderately to highly attractive. This is driven by strong regulatory requirements, increasing safety and ESG scrutiny, and sustained demand throughout the life cycle of mining projects. In addition, the limited available of independent, commercially oriented lab creates further opportunity. From the business strength perspective, the lab demonstrates strong technical capability, service reliability, and established client relationships. Its integration with consulting activities has also contributed to technical depth and market access. However, this same integration introduced constraints. Investment flexibility, market perceptions of independence, and scalability are limited under the current structure. When these dimensions are combined using the GE McKinsey framework, the laboratory is positioned in a favorable competitive zone within a moderately to highly attractive industry, suggesting strategic potential, but also highlighting structural limitations that affect future growth. Sorry. Internal readiness and external positioning together raise the final strategic question: does the laboratory create more value as part of the parent company or as an independent entity? Research question 3 examines the strategic viability of a spin-off through the lens of parenting advantage, rather than through a direct comparison of organizational alternative. The finding shows that PT SMB has historically created significant value for the geotechnical lab, particularly during its early development stage. This includes access to projects, technical integration, and organizational support, which are characteristic of strong parenting advantage. However, as the lab matures, its strategic needs begin to diverge from the dominant logic of the parent consulting firm. Sorry. These include greater investment focus, market-facing independence, and credibility as a neutral testing provider. Using the Ashridge parenting matrix, the lab can be interpreted as having moved from a clear heartland position toward the edge of heartland. While value creation is still possible, the risk of parenting misfit increases if the structure remains unchanged. From this perspective, the spin-off is not presented as an alternative option, but as a strategic response to a changing parenting relationship aimed at preserving and enhancing long-term value creation. I will now conclude by summarizing how the findings across the three research questions collectively support the study's conclusions. This slide summarizes the core logic of the study by mapping each research question to the analytical tools applied and the key findings obtained. For RQ1, the focus is on internal readiness and value creation. Using qualitative evidence and a discounted cash flow analysis, the findings indicate that the geotechnical lab has evolved beyond a supporting function. It demonstrates sufficient technical capabilities, operational maturity, and positive value creation. Potential to operate as an independent business unit. RQ2 examines the lab position relative to its industry environment through IVE and EEVE analysis and the GE McKinsey matrix. The results show that the geotechnical testing industry in Indonesia is moderately to highly attractive. The lab itself holds a favorable competitive position, although its growth and strategic flexibility are currently constrained by its integrated structure. Finally, RQ3 integrates the internal and external assessment by applying the parenting advantage perspective. The study finds that a spin-off represents the most viable and strategically advantageous option. However, this conclusion is conditional, emphasizing the importance of disciplined execution, governance readiness, and risk management during the transition. To conclude, this finding across the three research questions provide a coherent strategic narrative. First, the laboratory demonstrates sufficient internal readiness and value creation potential supported by operational maturity and positive financial indicators. Second, the external environment is assessed as a moderately to highly attractive. The lab holds a favorable competitive position, although its growth remains constrained by its current structure. Finally, from a parenting advantage perspective, PT SMB has played a valuable role during the lab's early development. However, as the lab matures, the strategic fits between parents and unit begin weaken, signaling the needs for a realignment. Overall, the study concludes that spin-off is not proposed as a structural preference or a trend-driven decisions. Instead, it represents a strategic response to the changing relationship between the lab and its parent company. The logic shift from incubation toward long-term value maximization. Importantly, this conclusion is conditional. The success of a spin-off depends on disciplined governance, financial control, and continued capability development to ensure that value is preserved and enhanced over time. As with any research, this study has several limitations that should be acknowledged. First, the research adopts a single case study design. While this allows for in-depth strategic analysis, it limits the ability to generalize findings statistically across the industry. Second, the financial analysis relies on projected assumptions, and scenario-based estimates, which are inherently subject to uncertainty. Third, external stakeholders' perceptions reflects current regulatory and market conditions, which may evolve over time. Finally, this study focused on strategic feasibility rather than post-spin-off execution outcomes. This limitation also opened avenues for future research. Further studies could adopt comparative or longitudinal approaches, examine post-spin-off performance, or incorporate deeper quantitative analysis of ESG and regulatory dynamics within technical service industry. With that, I conclude the presentation and welcome further discussion and academic feedback on this study. Thank you.